Hello, hello, hello. It's Lily and Riki here from Parent Support Network, coming in today with episode 34 of Parent Support Network TV. So today I wanted to come in to you to talk about a few things. Once again, things that have been coming up with my parenting clients and just in my general, area of interest in parenting and children and families. So today I want to talk about diagnosis, medication, and school. That's a lot of topics in one, right? But they kind of go hand in hand. So once again, I'll start with our story and why, I'm passionate about this and why I love this topic. So my youngest son, who's now 29, was diagnosed in preschool at about age 4. Well, actually, it started just before he was 4. He was diagnosed initially because the childcare centre he was in, they were not coping with him at all. They had a lot of challenges with his behaviour, with his defiance, with his oppositionality, with his sometimes aggression, and with his general attitude and behaviour. And it was challenging for them, it was challenging for us, and most importantly, it was challenging for our son. So the year before preschool, so he would have been 3.5 to 4.5. The childcare centre actually got in a child psychologist because they wanted to, I guess, dig a little bit deeper to see why he was having the challenges he was having and, to see how we could help. Now, my husband and I at that stage, we were all for it because, we wanted to find answers as well. We wanted to help our son. And we wanted him to be happy and healthy and thrive and all the things that parents want for their kids. At that stage, he was unhappy. He was not thriving. He was sad, actually. And, he was acting out in a way that didn't make him feel good and certainly didn't make people around him feel good. But unfortunately, due to not having love in our hearts, but due to pretty much ignorance, really, his carers and his parents were doing a lot of upside down relationshiping with him. So he was originally put in for, to see this psychologist initially, that the childcare centre actually organised, and it actually took some months. Look, it actually took ages, which was really upsetting because we were really keen to get answers sooner. But anyway, it did eventually happen, and this lady psychologist came along and she observed, I believe, our son for a few hours that day. And then she called us in to discuss. So her original diagnosis was that he had childhood depression. Now, I guess he was sad. He was upset that, that kids didn't like him. He sensed that he was, not appreciated for his behaviours. So, of course, he was not feeling happy. But childhood depression, we thought, was quite an interesting diagnosis for an under 4-year-old. And of course, with that diagnosis, the recommendation of antidepressants came hand in hand, which we were like, just, whoa, hang on, no, this is not the answer. So we said no to that. And then he struggled along, but, we started looking at things like diet, etc. But we absolutely said no to medication. In the following year, another psychologist was brought in and they did some more thorough evaluation, not just observing, but they did some sort of, a testing, etc., to see where his IQ was at. His IQ was actually pretty good. He came out pretty well with that. But once again, they then diagnosed him with ADHD and ODD. So from there, we went back to our GP. We still weren't happy. The GP then recommended us to the local child paediatrician, the paediatrician, who was so-called the specialist in this area. We went to him and he concurred that our son had this disorder called ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. and also ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder. So both of them are called a disorder. They both are listed in the DSM, the Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, and the Diagnostic Manual for Mental Disorders. And he was, they just continued diagnosing him and recommending medication. So each facility that we went to, whether it was childcare, kinder, schools, and so on, that seemed to be a common thread. That then led us to, the paediatrician, who agreed with the diagnosis, but he kind of almost put his hands up in the air, and after recommending medication and us turning that down, he said, well, I don't know what to do next. So he then recommended we go to the hospital and see a child psychiatrist. So unfortunately, the scenario there was much the same. By the time we saw this psychiatrist, he was now over 5. So we had been seeking answers for about 18 months to 2 years. And once again, we just did not like the solution. It's kind of like that saying, if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, soon everything starts to look like a nail. So the only, help or recommendations we were getting was to medicate our son. We still didn't understand what it meant for him to be diagnosed with these disorders. We didn't feel like he had a disorder. We didn't feel like he had a disease. We just felt like, he was behaving inappropriately and, had, I guess, was reacting to certain stimuli. He couldn't concentrate, he couldn't listen, and he was very, very hyperactive and on the go all the time. But we didn't sort of feel like that constituted him being diagnosed with a disorder or a disease. So we actually said no thank you and passed on all of those recommendations from quite a few professionals. As I said, we had a few psychologists. Then when he was in his first year at school, they called in another counsellor, and the counsellor also concurred. So they were all concurring with this ADHD, ODD diagnosis. My husband and I just weren't happy with that. We're just like, no, we want to know why he's having these challenges. Why is he behaving the way he's behaving? And not just give us a drug to band-aid these issues or the way he was behaving, but why is he behaving the way he is? And what can we do to help improve that for him, for our family, for anybody he interacted with at school, but initially at childcare, kinder, and then school. But unfortunately, we just didn't get the answers. So he went to 5 different childcare centres in our town. And at that time, where we lived in a large country town in Victoria, there were only 5 childcare centres. So he actually went to all of them. We then put him in a regular primary school. And the reason I'm going through this is because 25 years later, it still seems like the people I'm talking to are dealing with exactly the same issues. Like, one would think in 25 years that things would have changed, that there would have been different answers, more holistic ways to help our families and our children. But it seems like a lot of the same stuff that was going on back 25 years ago is still going on. So just quickly back to our son's story, because I think if I remember counting this prior, it was 11 different educational facilities he was in, from childcare to kinder to school, primary school, then secondary school, and he ended up getting kicked out of school at 15. So he went to that original primary school, which was just a regular primary school. That certainly did not work. They had him diagnosed. They had counsellors come in, and once again, they concurred with the ADHD OD diagnosis, and once again, medication was recommended. And we're like, what is going on here? He's just a baby. He's just a small boy. And, for 18 months, 2 years, all they want to do is diagnose him and then recommend medication. And we just kept saying, no, 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 no. But we really, whilst we were saying no to that, we didn't really have the answers. And that's where our challenge was. So from that primary school, we then found out about the Steiner system, the Steiner school, and there was a Steiner school 40 minutes out of our town. And he went to that Steiner school in grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and sometime during grade 5. Unfortunately, the school had to close down due to financial reasons, which everybody was so sad about, because whilst he still had some challenges in that system, in that school, and the way that those teachers and that community kind of interacted with him and with others, he was doing predominantly pretty well. You know, he still did have some challenges, but he was doing well. And in the meantime, at home, we had started working on a lot of stuff at home. We had started working on his diet. You know, we found out that he was super sensitive to colours, preservatives, additives, sugar, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. We looked at nutritional support. So we found some nutritional support that really did support his body and helped with his concentration, with his hyperactivity. We did not resort to a drug for that. We used nutritional support. We took on so many different holistic practitioners, you know, advice. We went, you know, from naturopaths to kinesiologists to Moira therapists to really alternative people. And we got, once again, we started putting a few pieces of the puzzle together. We started noticing some positive changes. Unfortunately, when the Steiner school closed down, he then had to go back into a regular primary school in our hometown in Victoria. It was a small country school, so we thought, you know, that should be good. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. He still seemed we still seemed to find that within 5 minutes of him being there, he was labelled the bad kid, the naughty kid, the kid who doesn't learn, the kid who doesn't listen, the kid who runs around. He was banned from going to the school camp because he broke a rule, and you know that was really tough for him, and that was tricky. And then we moved to Queensland, so he then went. We then enrolled him in another primary school there. He was meant to actually go to a Steiner school. That's a story for another day, but he decided he didn't want to, because I think he somehow felt, after going from the Steiner system into the regular primary school again, that he sort of felt like he was behind academically. We don't, you know, believe that was the case, but that's how he felt. So he actually said, no, I'm not going to another Steiner school, which was a real shame. We actually bought a block of land and built a house within 15 minutes of this Steiner school on the north side of Brisbane. We actually wanted to live on the Gold Coast, but we went there for him, and then he ended up not going to that school. So he went into a regular primary school. Unfortunately, once again, the same old, that did not work. The following year, so he's now that's grade 6. So then grade 7, we decided to switch him to a private Anglican college, which, you know, had a really good reputation, and a good reputation as being, you know, with discipline and so forth. Little did we realise that was not what he needed, and actually backfired big time. He got expelled from that school in his second year there, at the end of first term of his second year there. So that didn't work out. You know, they once again had labelled him as a troublemaker. He actually had a school record for the most number of discipline cards in that school, which, you know, I'm giggling about now, but certainly wasn't a positive thing. And it wasn't nice when we basically got asked by the principal to voluntarily take him out of the school, or he would be expelled. So he then went on to a secondary school, just a regular public secondary school in our area, because there weren't really any other choices. That went from bad to worse. So I won't go into all the detail, but basically at the end of, what year would that have been? At the end of year 9, he once again got expelled and was asked to leave, and he ended up leaving school at age 15. So I think that was 11, if I remember counting that correctly. So, and we struggled, you know, like as parents, even though we had all the love in our heart to help and support our son, we just didn't know what we didn't know. Hence why I ended up, you know, finding out about Nurtured Heart approach, and now I'm so passionate about that. But I think the key message I wanted to, you know, to share today is that things don't seem to have really changed that much in 25 years. And this is actually really disappointing. I've actually been listening to an amazing podcast channel called ADHD is Over. So if you're interested in ADHD, that is an amazing podcast, but it talks about a whole lot of stuff. And I've been listening to a lot of stuff on there, and that's in the States. And it seems like it's the same old over there as well. You know, they just want to diagnose and medicate our kids. Just recently, one of the ladies who is in my current 24-week parenting course, my Nurture Your Heart to Greatness course, she was sharing with me her, you know, dismay and disappointment. And, you know, she was basically pretty upset that her son, who displays certain behaviours that she wants to improve, and that's why she's joined my course, but at her son's school, it's meant to be a progressive school, but at her son's school, upon having meetings with the vice principal and her teacher, once again, it got down to the same thing. Your child is a problem. He's this, and this, and he needs to be diagnosed and medicated. And as a matter of fact, I was pretty shocked when she shared with me that the vice principal actually suggested that if she wanted her son to be able to, you know, function and be a part of you know, a normal kind of school life, then he would need to be medicated. And he actually went on to say that, and she actually said, no, you know, that's not the path that she wants to take. And he then went on to, and I consider it a bit of bullying, actually. It might be a strong word, but I feel it was bullying. Basically said to her, well, he needs to be medicated. My son has been diagnosed with ADHD and he's medicated, and there's nothing wrong with medication. And if you don't medicate them, they'll self-medicate when they get older. And as a matter of fact, the research actually proves it's quite the opposite. Most of the young people who self-medicate later were medicated with various ADHD types of drugs when they were younger, and some of them have been on many and varied. You hear so many parents, you know, talk about that they went from this drug and that didn't work, they lost their appetite, or this worked and then they tried another drug. So many kids over a period of years who are medicated end up on a series of medication that cause side effects. Then they take more medications for those, you know, those side effects. So those research actually shows that those kids are more likely to self-medicate in adult years than the ones who weren't medicated. So he wasn't right, and he had no right. He's not a practitioner, he's not a doctor. He had no right to kind of bully her into, you know, feeling like she had to medicate her son. So she's at a bit of a, you know, crossroads at the moment as to what to do as well. And she's trying to work through things because she doesn't feel supported by the school. And as a matter of fact, she found out also that her son's teacher also, her son's teacher's child also has ADHD, and it was implied that that child was also medicated. So it seems like, you know, medication is just a thing they kind of, you know, throw around, get the kid diagnosed, get the kid medicated. And I understand, I'm truly not here to judge parents who take this decision, but what I do urge you to do is do your own research. Don't just take at face value what a so-called professional tells you about the medication and the side effects and the benefits, etc. Do your own due diligence and do your own research as such. Yeah, so I know that a lot of parents these days are choosing to get their kids diagnosed for honourable and caring and loving reasons, because in order for their child to be supported at school, to get like maybe a teacher's aid or further support, they need to be diagnosed, and also in order for them to benefit from something like NDIS support, they also need to be diagnosed over the age of 7. So it is tough for parents, you know, trying to sort, you know, through this whole thing of diagnosis and medication, and, you know, what the right school is, and, you know, how the schools, you know, best support their children. And I've heard from some parents who have been in schools that have been very supportive of their children, but sadly they are the fewer stories are that way, and in many instances the parents don't feel supported. And it doesn't mean that the schools don't care, that the teachers aren't caring. And it's not about the parents or the child or the teachers. It's about the tools at their disposal, I guess. And if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, then everything does start to look like a nail. I'll go back to that analogy again. Thanks, Philip Day, for that amazing analogy. So today, I'm sorry if I felt like I was ranting and raving a little bit, but I really just did want to, share our journey and our story of 25 years ago, and really that it doesn't seem like things have changed that much. Like, I know that there are some different therapies out there now that families can use, and the Nurtured Heart approach has been around for 30 plus years now, and that actually came about when Howard Glasser, who was a family counsellor, identified that the current tools in his toolbox were not working for the more intense and challenging children. So over over a couple of years or so, or a few years, he actually put together this amazing way of communicating and relationshiping called the Nurtured Heart approach. If you haven't heard much about what I do with the Nurtured Heart approach and you'd like to learn or know more, just reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Can send you our latest masterclass. I'm actually currently running a 24-week course, but I am also now offering what I'm calling a rolling course, which basically means that people can jump into the course at any time, and it's structured in a way where you will get all of the information in a special vault, a course vault on my website, and also have the ability to join our calls live as well for discussion and Q&A. So if you've got an interest in that or want to hear a little bit more, you can go to my website, parentsupportnetwork.com.au. You can actually click on a link there that will set up a conversation for us to make an appointment or a time to catch up. Or otherwise, you can just have a bit of a look around and at my courses, etc., and see what's available. But if you are a parent who is struggling with a diagnosis, or wondering whether medication is the right thing for your child or not, or struggling with what school is the best for my child, it is challenging, it is difficult. I would just suggest doing research, talk to other parents, ask other parents about the schools their kids are at, and really do your research. Don't just take things at face value. Even if it is from a professional, they don't always have the answers that are going to suit you and your child and your family. So that's it from me today. Lillian Reiki from Parent Support Network, equipping parents to enjoy happy and healthy children and relationships on purpose. Bye for now.